Hi people, welcome everyone. Hi Lokesh, thanks for always be here. Um, how's my? Yeah, sorry, I think I had a bad connection because of which I got kicked out for a couple of seconds, but now I'm back on the phone data, which honestly is more reliable than the Wi-Fi that I have. Uh, Sadly, sad but true. So quarantine for me is going well. It's almost the end of it from the first. We have started doing our photo shoots and meetings and brainstorming sessions and ideating. So it's keeping us quite busy, I must say. Yeah, even I'm missing shoots. Hi Dhananjay, Sharad, Aditya. Hi guys. So we're going to start in a couple of minutes with the next photo autopsy. We're going to completely cut the image down into finer details, and we're going to get into the smaller nitty-gritties of what makes an image, or at least how I make my images, what I look out for, what I don't look out for, all those kind of things. So let's give it a couple of more minutes, maybe 2 more minutes, and we'll start. Till then, I'm enjoying all of you logging in. There's so many people today, it's unbelievable. Hi, Junaid. Chetan, hi, Chetan, how are you? Nice, nice. Guys, keep coming. Very excited to see you all over here. Liton Sarkar, hi. Nilesh Mehta, hello. Okay, great. So let's start. So I've got a suggestion here already. Please start any tutorial classes for starters in photography. So I'll tell you honestly, I honestly don't have the patience to go through the basics of photography. Although I am working on this whole going live and deconstructing photos and dissecting photos to tell you how it was shot. This itself is a very new domain for me. So very slowly and steadily I'll get there. So yeah, basics of photography I am planning to cover in a separate series altogether, but I think that will be more for YouTube than Instagram or Instagram Live. So definitely you can be on the lookout for it. Sunny, all good. How's lockdown? I see you're fit even in the lockdown. So great, kudos to you. Okay, great. So I'm going to start the session now. So what I'm going to do as usual is I'm going to switch off the commenting, so all of you can see the entire screen, and all the comments are not going to block your vision. So comments will be off. If you want to ask me any questions, or if you want to shoot any kind of suggestions or any kind of stuff at me, you can just click on the question mark in the box icon at the bottom of your screen and just post whatever it is that you have to over there, and 100% I will address each and every one. Yeah, so comments are going off now. Once again, tap on the question mark button at the bottom of the screen and type whatever you want over there. Okay, so what we're doing today is we're gonna dissect this image of mine. This honestly is like one of the favorite pictures that I have in my entire collection of concept photo shoots. Uh, I've been really wanting to talk about this and all the lighting diagrams that I've been doing, all the doodling around my pictures, where I'm explaining all the lighting and whatever happened during the photo shoot. I try to make my posts as elaborate as possible, but nothing really beats this face-to-face talk where I can take questions from you and tell you properly how it's done. So the model in this picture is Pragya. So Pragya basically is a Delhi model. I had no intentions of doing this shoot. I had absolutely not known Pragya until she contacted me on Instagram. So she's a Delhi model. She was visiting her friend in Pune. And I'm telling you this story because it's very interesting how things just fall into place, and things come together, and they synergize to give you something which is very concrete, very creative. So she randomly messaged me on Instagram, and I had a look at her profile, and I really liked her profile because it's not very often that you get girls with such short hair. And I always told her that I think your style and the way you carry your hair is the best thing about your face structure and the kind of personality that you have. So I had not really known anyone with this kind of a face structure and also that kind of hair. So both these things together really wanted me to get this shoot done. So she contacted me, and I think we fixed up a date for, I think, the next day or maybe 2 days from that day. And that's when I thought that, okay, I probably wanted to work with gels. Also, if you would have seen some of my recent posts, I love doing a lot of shutter dragging. I like shooting on slow shutter speeds. I like to give a lot of motion. I like to do double exposure. Sometimes, I do both the things or all three things together. So it purely depends on what the situation calls for. In the sense, when I go there, like I always keep telling, there's something very different that happens from what I had planned. So when I had met Pragya, I called her for the photo shoot. I had no intentions of shooting her with gels, but again, it was a very last minute decision. Eton was the makeup hair person on this photo shoot. I hope I'm getting that right, because I know I tend to mess up names, and my memory is probably as bad as a goldfish. So yeah, I'm pretty sure Eton was the makeup and hairstylist over here. So my intention was to get these very bold shots with a very good face structure, well defined lips, very strong nose, and very confident eyes. All of this to me just screamed boldness. So, and that's the aspect that I really wanted to bring out in Pragya when I shot her. So my brief to her was to not give me any kind of emotions, any kind of expressions, and that's what we tried doing throughout the photo shoot. So just straight in the camera shots where she's looking at the camera, nothing is really changing, and I'm playing with my camera, I'm playing with my colored gels. I'm going to tell you how I use these colored gels over here. A lot of people go overboard with using colored gels. I personally feel you should not really have more than 2 colors, or maybe I think even 3 colors is like an overkill. But personally for me, I've always followed the strategy, always followed the mantra of less being more. So I generally stuck to 2 colors, and whatever I got as a result of these 2 colors mixing. So I use gels in couple of different formats. So I've got these gels with me today, which I'm going to show you. So there are 2 ways of using these gels. One way is you wrap it around your light. Now you don't really need huge sheets of gel which completely cover your light. Let's say, for example, if you're using a modifier. Now I was using a strip, a beauty dish, and I think another softbox. We'll get to that in the next slide, which is the image breakdown. So what I did was I took the baffle, the diffusion material in front of the strip or the modifier. I completely took it out, and I made sure that the light bulb or the flash tube, that is wrapped around with the gel, not like sticking to it, but a little far away. All the rods which hold the modifier together, I just tucked these gels around and made sure that all the light that's coming out of the source is actually going through this colored gel, and I'm getting a colored output. Now that what happens over there, you tend to get very subtle colors. So a bit of post processing is absolutely essential. So but I think the beauty is in the subtleties, because you can always bump them up. I don't remember incidents where I have got too much of a color or too much of anything and I've been able to tone it down. I think the reverse process is generally a little difficult. So what you see over here is the final image. The 2 faces, one faded out and one which is sharp. That's all done by using a slow shutter speed, and I've asked the model to move. So we'll get into those details immediately. So I've already started getting some questions. So once again, since the commenting is off, just be sure to click on the box with the question mark at the bottom of the screen and type in your questions over there, type in your comments over there, type in whatever it is that you want to say over there. And 100% in the end, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, I will get into those questions. So what I'm going to tell you now is I'm going to change the slide to this one, where this completely explains to you the setup that I had used. So you see Pragya over there, standing over there. I've taken a very neutral green colored background. It's not overpowering, it's very muted. You see one strip to the model's left side which has got an orange gel on it, and it's also got a grid. The softbox has got a grid. Grid makes the light directional, as against the strip on the other side which has also got an orange gel from the inside. The one with the grid, it has got two layers of the orange gel, making it a little more saturated than the one to the right side of the model. So I've done that just to get some kind of a tonal contrast, some kind of a color contrast on her. My main light is coming from the top. If you see, there's a Manfrotto Avenger boom stand, and it's got a plain reflector bowl with a grid in it. Again, I love using grids because they make the light directional. If I take the grid off, the light is going to completely fall in all directions, and you're just going to be, it's going to be very difficult for you to control that light. So the whole idea is about controlling the light. Whatever light you're using, whatever modifier you're using, it's very, very critical that light be controlled. So always aim at controlling the light. Let you get what you want from the light. Don't settle for what the light gives you. So for that, you need to understand what you want. So imagine something that you want to shoot, have it in your head, and use the lights to try and achieve it. So I've used that reflector bowl with the grid from the front. It's almost as good as almost as good as butterfly lighting. So it's about 45 degrees up and above the head, and if you can see, it's throwing shadows on her face. The hair is casting a shadow on the eyes. The eyes, even the nose, is causing a shadow under the nose and on the upper lip. So the light is kept pretty far away because, again, I was playing with hard light. If you see in the final picture on the top left, you see a very distinct shadow of the nose which is falling on the upper lip. Now that is achieved only by using hard light. How I achieve hard light is, it's a bare reflector bowl with a grid. So if I use a bare reflector bowl, automatically the light is going to be hard. Also, once I place it further away, the further away I take the light from the model, the harder it's going to get. The closer I get it, the shadow is going to have a softer edge. So it's kept pretty far away, and the grid creates a spot and eliminates only this part, probably till the collarbones. So I generally do my lighting with the modeling lights on. I switch off all the lights in the studio because I exactly want to know where the modeling light is going and what effect I'm going to get from placing the light, where I'm placing it, and the kind of intensity that I'm getting from it. So it's all done very meticulously. So that's my key light, and I've got these two strips again, to give like an edge on both the sides, and I've put orange gels like I told you. So there's one light which is also coming from the bottom. If you remember my last photo autopsy, even then I had a very hard source of light coming from the top down, and because it was throwing a lot of shadows under the nose, under the eyes, also under the chin, what I had done is I had kept one more softbox right under the face. So now this softbox is probably at maybe 2 stops lesser than the key light, because I just want subtle light going into the shadow areas, and just slightly reduce the shadows, because I don't want very deep shadows, because they'll tend to absorb a lot of my color coming from the gels. So that light from the bottom acts like a fill, and of course I've put like a net on it. Now this net is like, it looks like a mosquito net. If you've seen a mosquito net, I think living in India, everybody must have seen a mosquito net at some point in their life. So I put this black net because at some point my light goes to its lowest intensity, and even if I want to take it a little lower and I have no other option but to let the light pass through something, I make I fold the net into maybe a double or a triple ply, and then I keep it on the soft box. So what happens is the net absorbs a lot of light, and I get a 1-stop difference or a 2-stop difference even below the lowest intensity of the light. So that's something that I do a lot. Again, I like being in control of whatever it is that I'm doing. So this is a very good way of controlling the light. So couple of ways of using the gels. Now what I've done is, I've got a lot of these gels. Now this is like I think about a 6" by 6" square. I've got this in multiple colors. This is like a red, this is a yellow, Then I've got a gray. Now this is not a colored gel, but what this does, if I put this into any light, of course this goes primarily into a barn door holder, and inside the barn door holder you can slide in these gels and they'll give you a color cast. Now this is not a colored gel, it is a colored gel, yes, but it's what this gel is going to do, it's just going to cut your light down by half a stop or one stop, as against the colored gels, which will probably cut the light down a little bit, but their job is to essentially give you a color cast. So I've got like a myriad of these colored gels that I keep using. So these are your square gels, and I use them in combination with these big sheets. So you kind of know what I'm trying to tell you. So if you go to any stationery shop, you'll get these color gel sheets, or I think they call it the gelatin gel, which is really good to wrap around the light or inside the light modifier around the bulb. I use the big ones. And that's one way to get a color cast on the model. But one more way of getting the color cast on the model is to put a color gel in between the camera and the model, which is what I've done over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump to what the raw file looks like, which is directly from the camera, and you'll come to know what is the raw shot that I got and how much of work has gone into getting the final photograph. So there you go. This is the raw photograph directly from the camera. So as you can see on the model's left side, I told you the strip box with the grid had a double layer of orange. So that's why you get a nice deep orange color cast on this side of the face, and the other side also had a tint of orange. But what I've done is I have used a gel, a green gel, this very gel, and what I've done is I have put this in between the camera and the model, and I've put it in a way that the edges of the gel are not seen. So a simple demonstration is, this is me holding the gel, where you can tell it's a gel and you can see the edges of the gel. But if I put it subtly in a very intelligent way and not show you the edges of the gel, look at the effect that it has, So maybe if I can do something like this, so this is what I have done. So the fact that the gel is very, very close to the camera, so I'm shooting with one hand, and with the other hand I'm trying to insert the gel in between the camera and the model, So when I'm shooting, I'm constantly doing this. I'm putting in a corner from here. I'm getting in another corner from this side, from the top, from the right, from the left. So a lot of things that I'm doing, a lot of things are going on over there. And because the gel is so close to the camera, what happens, the closer it comes to the camera, the sharp line that you're seeing over here right now, that completely gets into a blur. So I get a very nice gradation, I get a very nice progression of this green. There's no edge, it just gets into whatever is the natural color or the natural state of the skin of the model. So the idea is to hold it really close to the camera. In this case, it will be something like this. Do you see right now? The closer I'm getting it, the more blur it's going to get. And if I just insert that into the lens, this is what happens, it gets blurred out, and you'll never know that it's a gel held in between the camera and the model. If I just start pulling it out, taking it far away from the camera, it starts getting a very sharp edge, and then you're gonna just get reflections and unnecessary things over here. Of course, this is a mobile phone camera, a tablet camera. I'm doing this session from an iPad, so it's essentially a wide angle lens where everything seems to look sharp. So in this picture, I have held a green gel on the top, which comes in something like this, and to exaggerate and exaggerate the colors and to get something sharp, like a shaft of pink and the red that's happening on the face, what I've done is I've just put one more in from here, which is like that. So it's like a melange of green, and there's like a small amount of blue also coming into the frame from the bottom like this. And yeah, and the key light which is coming from the top has got the red, plus the red is playing with the orange, and it's just giving me a different color cast. So there's no fixed formula to doing this. All of you will have to try different things and try and get the result out. Now if you see the ghost image which is, appeared on Pragya's right side. So that is her physically moving from here to here. So what I've done is I've kept the shutter speed very, very slow. Let's get into the details of the camera settings. So these are the camera settings. So the camera that I've used is of course the US 5D SR, and the lens is 85mm f1.2. Beautiful lens, always like a go-to lens for me. The shutter speed was an all of a 0.6 seconds. I didn't want to take it slower than that because I wanted the end position where the model stops and freezes. I wanted that to be pretty sharp. If I would have taken it down to 1 second or even a 1.5 second, what would have happened is, she moves from here to here, and even over here there's a little bit of movement. If she likes it or not, you tend to get that kind of a movement. So when she stops over here, 0.6 seconds kind of, helps me freeze her over here. Otherwise, what's going to happen is there's just going to be some movement here also. So I'll get a ghost image over here, and then I'll get the final image of the model on the side, but that is also going to be a little fuzzy. So that's something that I really wanted to avoid, which is why I've shot on a 0.6 and nothing lower than that. So it's all about timing. So what you got to tell the model, and again over here I can't stress the importance of communication enough, is you exactly have to tell her what you have in mind. You need to tell how a shutter works. I go to them and I tell them what a shutter is all about. I tell them that the shutter speed is going to be very, very slow, and as a result of that, whatever is going to happen once I click my shutter release button, whatever is going to happen in front of the lens is all going to be recorded. As a result, you're going to get I'm going to get a blurry picture or a sharp picture. And now this is intentional blurring. The room was pretty dark, so I was just working with the modeling lamp of the key light and the other lights. So I told her to start from the image, which is the ghost image, and I clicked a picture, and she just physically moved the body weight. So from the left, from taking her body weight from the right side, she moved it to the left side, and this was just the shift that she did with the same expression, nothing else moving, and we get this ghost image. So over here at 0.6 seconds, while this picture is being registered, midway you're just pulling her out, leaving this halfway through, and you're moving to the side, and then she stops over here, and then she gets the rest of the time over here to completely, for the camera to completely record the image, when she shifts from point A to point B. So that's one way of blurring. There's also other ways of using doing shutter drag, or a lot of other ways to blur the model, but over here this is what was done. The model physically moved from point A to point B. The aperture was f4, so over here the depth did not really matter. At f4 you use a good lens, you tend to get a pretty sharp picture. So honestly, going lower than that, I didn't want to risk it, because if I shoot it at f1.2, then sometimes what happens is the eyes are in focus and the tip of the nose goes out of focus, and even like a 1 or 2 millimeter movement backward and forward tends to throw the model out of focus. So here I was working almost in the blind with just very dim modeling lamps, so I exactly had to know what was happening. So hence I chose to keep the aperture at a f4. Honestly, 4, 5.6, 6.3, it would not have really mattered, because there's nothing at the back that I want in focus or out of focus. It was a room with no ambient light, so honestly the aperture was the least of my concerns. I have kept the ISO at 50 because it gives me a nice crisp image, and the grain of the picture is not a question at all. It gives you a really sharp and a very tight, compact grained picture. So that's why I had chosen to use that ISO, which is a ISO 50. Great. So moving on, I've got a couple of questions which I'm gonna come to. So again, once again, for people who have joined in late, I've switched on the comments, but that does not mean that I don't want to hear from you. I've switched on the comments so it does not overlap the picture for all the other viewers. You can just click in the box with the question mark at the bottom, type on that, click on that and type out your question or your comment or whatever it is that you want to say or ask, and I will come to it in the end. So I'm going to move on to the next slide. So this is the raw picture, like I told you before, and to the top left is the final picture. Now, what have I done to this picture because of which the green has turned into a blue and a very highlighted blue. I love the way the collarbones are popping. So if you see in the raw picture, she was wearing a strapped top. So what I've done in post is I've completely removed the straps, because a nice defined neck and beautiful collarbones is something that I always look out for in my models. And whenever I get someone like that, I surely show them off, because it really really adds a lot of structure to the picture. It really adds a lot of character and a lot of dimension and depth to the photograph. So what have I done to the raw picture that it ultimately looks like the one that you're seeing on the top left corner, which is my final shot. So I'm going to open up a slide now, which is going to be the raw treatment slide. So there you go. So I have not changed the exposure at all, because I thought the exposure was pretty good. So the exposure is kept at 0. The contrast has been bumped to plus 13. What happens is the contrast makes the picture more deep in terms of the difference in the shadows and the highlights. So the deeper the shadows get by increasing the contrast, the more saturated the colors also get at the same time. So normally what happens is, the contrast being increased, the saturation has to be decreased normally, because like I said, once the contrast increases, even the colors get very deep and very saturated. So brightness I have kept intact, and the saturation, just to compensate for the for going overboard and ballistic with the contrast, I have reduced the saturation to about minus 35, and still I get such saturated tones. So you can imagine the actual picture, how saturated and gaudy it would be at a contrast of plus 13. So what I had done with the shadows, what I have done with the shadows is I have opened up the shadows by a plus 20. Now what that does, it brings out more details in the shadow areas, and the shadow areas are the areas which are actually catching nice deep color. Of course the highlights are catching it, but it's more accentuated in the shadow areas. When I open up the shadow areas, I get two things. One is the shadows opening up, and I get more detail. When I get more detail, I get more definition on the face of the colors, of the features of the model. Like if you see, there's a nice lick of red over here. There's a nice lick of red over here. There's some shine, happening on the chin. Nice, nose bridge. So all of that happens if I open up the shadows ever so slightly. Also, second reason why I opened up the shadows was the ghost image of the model, which is happening on her right side, on this side. Now that is an area which is completely gotten into the shadow area. So if I open the shadow areas, I get more details on the ghost image. So that is one more reason why I opened up. So it worked both ways for the final shot of Pragya and also for the ghost image. Once I open up the shadows, I get more details in the shadows, and at the same time, I get more visibility on her ghost image. So it achieves two things at the same time. Highlights, there were hardly any highlights, so I haven't really tinkered around with the highlights. But if you see, the color temperature normally would be around 5400 to 5500 Kelvin. So I have pushed that, or rather pulled that down into the cooler zone of the spectrum. So I've pulled it down to 4363 Kelvin. That's what gives me the deeper blues, and that's also why the orange on the face has gone into like a pinkish red. So that's one of the reasons. And the tint of the image has been the slider has been moved down to minus 9.8 to almost minus 10. So there's no fixed formula. Next time if I do this shoot, I'll probably do it all differently, or I'll probably do it the same way. It all depends on what you want as the end product. So the idea is to just tinker around with all these sliders, and just do it knowing what you're doing, and just know what the contrast, the brightness, the saturation, shadows, what is it actually going to do to the picture. You really really need to have that in mind before you actually start tinkering with these. Don't just go ballistic with all the sliders and you get something which is very ghastly. That could very well happen. So slow and steady. I think a good photograph and good lighting is all about subtleties. So be subtle with your changes and the way you're dragging your sliders, and see what's happening. Also, when you're changing the contrast, you need to pay attention to what's it doing to the saturation, what's it doing to the shadows. If you're playing with the brightness, also you have to keep in mind what's it doing to the contrast, what's it doing to the highlights. So you change one thing and a lot of other peripherals also change. So you all have to keep all of that in mind. while working with it. So to conclude, what I've done again is right here in front of you. After this, in post, the only thing I've done in post is I've just removed the straps of the top that she's wearing, and I think the image was good to go. I was in love with it. So this is a series of images. I think more of these you will see on my Instagram, where I've done some drastic movements with the head. I've made her use her hands and all, and it's just amounted to more drama and more blur and more ghost images. So just scroll down a little on my Instagram and you will find all the details and all the other pictures also that went that came out along with this one. So that's about it. It's pretty simple, not rocket science. I think with a little bit of foresight and a little bit of thinking, a little bit of visualizing, anyone and everyone can do this. Everyone will do it differently. That's a given. In fact, even if I want to recreate this image again, even I can't do it. So that's how unique photography is to each and every person. So there are quite a few questions. So I'm just going to jump into that right now. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think around 6 questions. So Siddesh Neve is asking me, how did you manage to control the light even in slow shutter? The aperture looks white too. How did I manage to control the light even in slow shutter? So Siddesh, this is not continuous light. So when I clicked the shutter release button, I got a proper flash. I was using flash strobes. So controlling the light was all about either reducing the intensity or increasing the intensity. So I resort to putting cloths on the light modifiers. I resort to putting grids which reduce the light, make the light directional. I also put black colored nets on the modifiers to get the light down or to control the light. Sometimes I have a double diffusion and then I have a net and then I also have a grid. So it depends on how much you want the light to be controlled. So yeah, that's that. Gitanshu is asking me, I want to know which camera is more suitable for fashion photography, a mirrorless or a DSLR. So honestly, Gitanshu, I am not a fan of mirrorless at all. In fact, that's one technology which I don't think I'll ever embrace. I don't really have a reason. I'm pretty sure they're good cameras, but a mirrored camera with the sound of the mirror going up and the viewfinder completely going blank for a fraction of a second, and just the whole feel of a mirrored DSLR camera is far more satisfying than a mirrorless camera for me. So great, no offense, and with all due respect to the mirrorless cameras, I'm a DSLR guy. I don't think I'll ever resort to a mirrorless camera, but that does not mean that you will not get good shots from a mirrorless, or that it'll fall short anywhere. In fact, if at all, the DSLR might fall short if you have to compare and get into like finer details, because obviously mirrorless will does have some advantage over the DSLR, and the other way around. So it's just a matter of what you're comfortable with. Now, Godbole VRD, I'm guessing that's short form for Varad. So Godbole, Mr. Godbole, or I don't know what to call you, he's asking me, is this a second curtain flash? So no, this is not a second curtain flash. This is very much the first curtain flash. And I think the other questions are, I think I've answered in whatever I told you right now. I think I've answered whatever I had to of the other 2 questions. And Rasha Agarwal is saying hi Rasha, nice to have you here. So I guess that's pretty much it. If you have any more comments, if you have any more suggestions. Okay, so there are more questions. We'll quickly do these and then move on. So Eton, my makeup artist and hairstylist, he's he's a ace. He's an absolute genius with whatever he does. Great person also. So he says waiting for the next shoot. So Eton, now that we are out of the lockdown and I've already done 1 shoot for this week, next week we're meeting for sure, and we're going to pull something out of our hat, and it's definitely not going to be a rabbit. It's going to be something better and more exciting than that. So I'll get in touch with you for that. So Abhinash is saying, why did you shoot in slow shutter? So I shot in slow shutter because I wanted to have movement to the picture. I wanted to create the ghost image, and that would not have been possible without using a slow shutter speed. And what else is here? Nirav Thakkar says, how did you create a concept for a photo shoot? How you create a concept for a photo shoot? So I don't really create a concept for photo shoot, so it all depends on what inspires me at that point in time. I generally come to a photo shoot with a very blank mind, with a clean slate. Sometimes, I'm driving from my home to the studio, and maybe I'll see something on the street and the brief changes then and there. Maybe there's a certain kind of light, something I'll see about the clouds or about the sky, or it's about the light falling on some passerby on the road, or maybe it's just the setting sun when I'm going back home. I probably get a lot of backlight, and that could be my inspiration for what I'm going to do the next day for the photo shoot. So, it just comes from everywhere. I honestly don't wait to be inspired. I just go out there and get the job done. So inspiration, well, sometimes it comes, sometimes it doesn't come, but I've always seen better results flow when I've actually directly landed up on a photo shoot, and I've let the shoot take a form of its own. It's times like those that I've gotten better results. So I leave it at that. Great. So that's about it. And if you've got any questions for me, if you've got any suggestions of how do I make this better, or some things that I'm doing which you're not liking or can be done in a better way, I'm completely open to feedback and suggestions. So keep the messages coming and spread the word, because these sessions are going to get better and better. And of course, this will be on IGTV in the next couple of minutes. So try doing this. If you manage to get something close or better, then do share it with me. And I shall see you next week for the next photo autopsy. Until then, happy clicking, be safe, take care.